Zuby, again, my friend. Thank you for joining me in the trenches.
Happy to be here, man. How you doing?
Dude, it's been a long time since we chatted. You in South Africa, and a lot has happened since then. Wink, wink.
Seriously, dude. Seriously. The past couple of years the past 5 or 6 years have been a bit of a blur, to be honest with you. I mean, 50% of it was somewhat taken away from us due to the whole scamdemic situation. But time is flying. And I think the older you get and the more years you've lived, the faster the perception of each year that passes by, because it's a smaller percentage of your life. So I guess that's just going to keep moving in that way.
Yes, but you are being very vague. I am referring to the arrival of your new offspring.
Oh, yeah.
It is amazing.
It is amazing, man. I feel very blessed. I'm happy to take on new roles as a husband and as a father. I've gone from 1 to 3 in the past couple of years in terms of my responsibilities and my duties. So it's a beautiful thing, man. Ultimately, it's what we are here for, if you really think about it. So it feels good to continue on that chain and to be at the early phase of that. I'm looking forward to all of the ups and downs and the blessings and the challenges and everything that's going to come with parenthood, man. So it's an exciting time for me.
Yeah, I love that you said that because, I mean, a lot of what I do is very negative and cynical and pessimistic, and the world doesn't have enough of people like you who bring the counterbalance to all of that.
Well, thank you. Just about an hour ago, before recording this, I was going through some of my notifications online, which I don't do all that often, but sometimes I find very odd criticisms of myself. Sometimes, I get the usual stuff, but then I saw someone criticizing me for being too positive. They said that I'm the epitome. They said, quote unquote, Zuby is the epitome of toxic positivity. I was like,
what is that?
I read it a few times. I was like trying to understand it. I was like, okay, so the criticism is that I am so positive that it's toxic, and apparently it negatively affects young people because I'm so positive. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't really know how to square that one, but I guess if that's what people are throwing at you, then I guess you're doing pretty well at that stage.
Something that's really bugged me, Zuby, over the last few years is the amount of blackpilled people that I see.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And it's been trending in that direction for a long time, man. I think the past decade has been, it's been quite relentless over the past decade. I feel like the psyops have been nonstop, and there's just been a constant tension, increased polarization every single year from about 2015, certainly up until 2024, and arguably up until now. There's been a thing, right? There's been a current thing. There's been something for people to be mad at, people to be divided over, people to be fearful of. And even when there's a temporary lull, it seems like the mainstream media and even a lot of people on social media default back to certain narratives, because there's certain narratives that are just like, you can always get people jacked up over, right? So you've kind of got it went from global cooling to global warming to climate change to climate emergency to climate, right? Like, so when there's a bit of a lull, it's like, okay, let's freak people out about the climate again. The sun is too hot, the oceans are going to boil, everyone's going to die. We have 5, 6, 7 years to sort it out. Otherwise it's going to be over. Or it can be, the threat of another pandemic, or it can be, we're on the brink of nuclear war and World War III is about to kick off. The truth is, there's always a narrative. There are always narratives that you can use to keep people living in fear, because the world is full of positive and negative, and it always has been. I mean, as long as human beings have existed, you can look at any history book, and there has always been war. There's always been disease. There's always been the threat of famine. There's always been tribalism. There's always been that's just the nature of the world. Every single day, hundreds of thousands of people are born, and hundreds of thousands of people die. And we're not really that conscious and aware of it for the most part, unless it's close to home, right? We don't sort of sense that in an average year, 60 million people die per year, 60 million. And I don't know how many are born, maybe about 100 million, something like that. And we're not really conscious of it. We're not aware of it. Even when I say those statistics, it doesn't really register in our brain because they're such big numbers. It's just kind of like, okay. But that's just the nature of the world. So if you choose to focus on the negative, there's an infinite amount of negative to focus on. Like you're not gonna, especially if you're looking on an international scale, you're never going to find a shortage of things to be upset about, things to be angry about, things to be worried about, things to be outraged about. But on the flip side, there's also so much beauty and so much love and so much positivity in the world. And I would actually say that the latter outweighs the former. And the reason why I say that is because if it weren't the case, I often make the point that I believe that most people are decent, or at least trying to be, because I know there are some people, people who have been really black-pilled like to believe that most people are bad and that you can't,
nefarious.
Yes, that the majority of people, over 50% of people, have bad intentions, or they're malicious, or they want to predate on you, something like that. And I know for a fact that that is not true. And the reason I know it's not true is because no society, no neighborhood, no community, no nation would be able to remotely function if most people were bad. If average, you wouldn't be able to do anything. You wouldn't be able to walk around. You wouldn't be able to drive. You wouldn't be able to. Everything would just break down. The reality is, there's a tiny percentage of people, sadly, and again, this has always been the case. There's a small percentage of people who do most of the bad stuff. All right, especially if you look at something like crime. In most communities, like 1 to 2% of the population is going to be doing 80 to 90% of all of the crime. Right? It might be like 1% of people do like 99% of the murders in any given country, in any given community. That's just how it goes. But I think because we're so sensitive to negativity, probably as a survival mechanism, that there's always an inclination to focus on the scary stuff, on the bad stuff, on the negative stuff. But if you do that too long, then you lose sight of the goodness. And I think that's a dangerous place to be, because that is when you get, to use the term you said, black-pilled. And I think that's why so many people are on that path, because for so many years, there have just been all these narratives. It's just being pushed. There just hasn't been a break. There's been no respite. And due to the interconnected nature of the world we now live in, with social media and 24/7 news and just information streaming in from everywhere, our brains are not really wired to handle it. Like we're not meant to know so much. There's something great about the internet, being able to do, for example, what we're doing right here. But our ancestors were not dealing with a constant stream of information of not just what's happening around them, but what's happening all over the globe, no matter where you live, whether you're in South Africa or the United Arab Emirates or the UK or Australia. Within minutes, you can be aware of every bad thing that's happening. And also you can see everyone's opinions about it and people's arguing with each other and all this back and forth. And we're just not designed for it. We've had this for what, 20 years? Not even 20 years. So our grandparents didn't have to deal with this. Our great grandparents didn't. None of our ancestors ever had to deal with this level of information. And we're very new to it. And I don't think most people aren't good at handling it. And most people are also not good at setting the filters so that they can somewhat control. We all do have the ability to control it, but most people aren't very good at doing that. And I think that because even the negativity and the outrage can still create a dopamine hit, people can also get addicted to negativity. People don't just get addicted to positive feelings. People also can get addicted to negative feelings. It's why doom scrolling exists, right? People are quite literally scrolling, looking for something that's going to anger them, something that's going to trigger them, something that they can react to and respond to, the next person that they can shout out online. And, it just happens. And oftentimes, if you're a public figure, sometimes you'll be that person, right? You're just that person who comes across their feed at the time when they're feeling angry. And, they start smashing their keyboard and, yelling at you, and sometimes you're a bit like, whoa, this is a bit of a disproportionate response to to what I was saying. But it just comes with the territory, man. So that's why, in light of it all, I always strive to I try to bring a lot more light than any darkness, because that's been my goal for the past 20 years. It's why my music is positive. It's why I try to keep my social media generally upbeat. There's enough people out there who are, if people are looking for the bad stuff, it's not hard to find. It's there, right? It's there. I don't need to be adding to it anymore. I'd much rather try to, at least in some way, inspire, motivate people. Yeah, I do my best, man.
But Zuby, that's toxic. All right, we've now come to the conclusion that trying to uplift people and see the good is toxic. You walk through a field and you see a beautiful waterfall and a rainbow. That's disgusting.
That is disgusting.
I mean that's how people have. This is what's happened now to society. Even what you've just said now, I guarantee you, somebody's going to have an issue with something you said.
Sure, of course, absolutely. And that's fine, but that doesn't reflect on me. That reflects on them. If you want to be, everything can be criticized. That waterfall and the rainbow that you just talked about, there are people who would get mad at you for mentioning that, because you know what? Like, some people, not everyone has access to waterfalls and rainbows. There are children dying right now. There are bombs dropping. Yes. How dare you appreciate that when there are so many people suffering in the world? Or you know what, you bigot, you're an ableist, because some people are blind and some people can't see. Not everyone is able to, some people have never been able to see a rainbow. And you're a bigot because you're appreciating this rainbow, being totally unaware of the fact that some people are blind. So how dare you? Or why a rainbow? Some people would rather have a mountain. Some people would rather have this, right? So, you're saying you like rainbows. Maybe does that mean that you hate rivers? I don't know. People are strange. You can say you like cats and someone will accuse you of hating dogs. And that's just how some people are. But it's the internet. I don't take it too seriously. You have to have some humor in it.
But I wonder why it's become like that. I mean, for all his warts, Jordan Peterson probably was right about how the internet has accelerated sociopathic behavior.
Yes, I think he's correct. And it's exposed us to it. Because, look, in the real world, we filter who we interact with quite heavily, actually. You're not just like friends and acquaintances with everybody. And on the internet, if you put something out online, billions of people have access to it. Literally billions of people. You could write a post on, whether it's a YouTube video or it's a podcast or it's an X post or an Instagram post or something on Facebook. If you post it publicly, there are billions of people who potentially have access to it. Whereas in the real world, if you say something, you're having a conversation, you're naturally filtering who you're having those conversations with. And so you just get all sorts. I mean, even online, it's kind of funny how we're doing this, because, again, we are focusing on the small percentage of very angry, very bitter, perhaps even sociopathic people out there. But if I post something online, 90 to 95% of the comments and the reactions are positive. It doesn't even matter what it is, unless I'm posting something that's like very, very, very controversial. 95% of my interactions are extremely positive. But you know how it is. You get 100 comments, and even if 100 of them are saying, great job, or that was awesome, or I like you, or I respect you, the one that stands out to us is the critical one, or is the one where someone is insulting, or the one where someone is just being nasty for no reason. That's just the way our brains, we're just naturally sensitive to it. So it sort of stands out in the pile. But I don't want people to get it twisted. The vast majority of it is positive. I'm sure with what you do, the majority of the feedback you get is positive. I don't think you'd be able to do what you do for as long as you've done it if the majority of the feedback you received was negative. I don't think you'd be able to go for years and years. You'd be a bit like, why am I even doing this if that were the case? So, that's how it is. And the bigger your audience is, the more you get exposed to every single corner of the internet. There are types of human beings that I didn't even know existed until I started using social media. And in particular, when I started growing a bigger platform, because I'd see things and I'm like, I have never in the real world, I don't have conversations with people like this. Like I don't come across this type of person or this type of mentality. But if 1 million people see something, then, you know, even if just 0.1% of the people who see it are a little bit are not in a great state, that is still many, many thousands of people. So, you know, it's just how it goes.
Yeah, but I mean, adding to what you're saying, social media is also just a microcosm of the real world.
I'll tell you what, Jerm. I've been to 45 countries now, and I've never been to a country that was accurately represented by traditional or social media. Never. Not once. There's not one nation I've been to where I'm like, oh, okay, this is totally in line with the stuff I see, the stuff I've seen on the TV or read in the newspapers or seen online. Because I often make the point that normal doesn't go viral. Normal doesn't make the news. You're never going to see in the news, oh, it was a sunny day in Cape Town and everybody got on with each other and people went to work and looked after their families and like just live their life. That's not news. But if something freaking crazy happens, right? If in the city of millions of people, one person goes out there and does something heinous or does something crazy, then boom, that's what makes the news. That's what goes viral. That's what's getting millions and millions of eyeballs. So when that happens multiple times, and it doesn't matter the city, it doesn't matter the country, it doesn't matter the region, that's what people see. So there are people who 80% of what they see from South Africa is negative, right? They could be chilling in California, and every time they see or they hear about South Africa, it's something negative. It's, oh my gosh, like, look at this. Oh my gosh, look at this murder. Look at this assault. Oh my gosh, this person just got robbed. Oh my gosh, look at what this politician just said. Look at that. And it's different for you because you're in the country. So you see that, but you also see the normal. You also see the good. So you can scale it in your brain and be like, okay, maybe this does exist, or maybe this is a problem, or this is a threat, but there's also all of this. So it's much more balanced. And it's the same in every country. I mean, when I'm in the US, I'll get people who are like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing what's going on in the UK. Like, it looks crazy. Like every time I see the UK in the news, it's, you know, people being arrested over tweets, or it's grooming great gangs, or it's like this terrorist, you know, there was a terrorist attack some weeks ago or whatever, because that's all they see. And then if I'm in the UK and I'm talking to people, I'm like, oh yeah, I just came back from the US. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, it's crazy there. It seems like they're just having shootouts all the time. All the police are racist. You can't even send the kids to school because there's all these like school shooters and, you know, everything with, you know, Trump and this and this. And it's just like, it's weird because I travel a lot, right? And I meet people in every country who are afraid to travel to other countries because of this. So there are a lot of people right now who I'm sure if I posted tomorrow, like, hey, I'm going to South Africa. I'm going to go to South Africa for a week. There will be people who are like, don't go, right? Like, I just saw such and such, and they'll send me links and they'll send me videos and they're like, Zuby, like, don't go. If I say I'm going to the US, if I say I'm going to Los Angeles, people are like, no, don't go to Los Angeles, right? Don't. And it happens everywhere. Like, I live in Dubai, and if, you know, you just mention Dubai, people are like, oh my gosh, like, what about this? And again, people will send you articles. They'll find the worst things that have happened in Dubai in the last 10 years, and they'll start sending you articles and links to try to prove to you that it's dangerous or that, you know, something bad is going to happen to you. And I'm just like, guys, you could do this for every country on the planet, right? Except maybe like Vatican City or maybe like Liechtenstein or somewhere with like 10 people. You can find hundreds, if not thousands if not millions of horror stories. Like, this is just how it is. And I don't know, man, it's a bit of a shame, but I like to think that every single day, I at least can try to like nudge people in a direction that's a bit more in line with reality and where people can feel like they can live their lives. Because one of the biggest problems with the blackpilling is that it stops people from living their lives. It's very similar to part of my problem with the whole pandemic narrative from 2020 to 2022. They terrified people so much that people were so afraid of getting sick that they stopped living, right? So there are people who, like, for 2 to 3 years, they basically put their life on hold. They stopped seeing their friends. They stopped seeing their family. They stopped showing their face in public, quite literally. They stopped, like, all the traveling, all the hobbies, all the things that they normally would do, they stopped. And because they were so fearful. To this day, there are still people living in fear because of COVID, which is insane. Like, life is to be lived. And the reality is that everything in life has an element of risk. Every single thing. It doesn't matter. Even inaction has risk. If I say I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to stay in my apartment and I'm not even going to go outside, that has risk with it. If I say I'm going to get in my car and drive somewhere, that has a risk. If I say I'm going to travel somewhere, if I'm going to meet up with someone, if you're going to be in a relationship with someone, you're going to have children, everything has risks. There's risks to not having children. There's risks to having children. There's risks to getting married. There's risks to not getting married. There's risks to traveling. There's risks to not. It's just like, man, you know, at the end of the day, you have to live your life. And I don't recommend people take ridiculous risks that are just reckless, right? People shouldn't be reckless. And if someone's going to travel, I would always advise, like, people to be smart, especially if you're going somewhere that's, you know, has got a bit more, you know, is a bit more dangerous, for example. Like, take the necessary precautions and be smart, but don't just be so afraid of life and all the people in the world that you just don't experience anything. I think it's sad for someone to get to the age of, I don't know, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and you've spent your entire life just like in one little corner, literally and figuratively, because you were so afraid or skeptical about the rest of the world. It's a shame, I think.
I mean, there obviously is a degree of healthiness in some paranoia. I mean, you need to be a little bit paranoid. Like, if you don't know South Africa and you come here thinking that it's as safe as Dubai, you're a fool.
Yes,
but it's not.
Sorry,
yeah,
carry on.
No, I was going to say, but it's not a Wild West.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call that paranoia, though, Jerm, because paranoia is an extreme. Being paranoid is by definition an extreme position. You should be cautious. You should be vigilant. You should be street smart. You should be wise, but you don't need to be paranoid. I mean, paranoid is, those are the people who are, you know, wearing 5 masks every day and taking every single dose of vaccine and not going out. Like, that's paranoia. Like, that's the level of paranoia, right? Normal precaution would just be like, oh, okay, like, I'm going to go about my life and I'm just going to take reasonable. Paranoia is refusing to drive a car or get on a plane because you're afraid of car accidents and plane accidents. That's paranoia. Precaution is buckling your seatbelt and driving carefully and obeying the signs and just being generally aware. Like, that's smart. But paranoia is too far. Paranoia stops you from living your life.
And it's very important to wake up in the morning with a sense of purpose or meaning.
Agreed. 100%. It's critically important, because if you don't have that, if you don't have that, and everyone does, by the way, but not everyone is tapped into it. But if you feel like you don't have that, then that's where depression sets in. And at an extreme end, that's when people, you know, develop actual suicidal thoughts and tendencies, because ultimately you have to believe that the future has the potential to be better than the present. That's essentially what hope is. Hope is basically believing that the future is going to be better than the present. So no matter what you're going through, no matter what your life looks like, you can keep on going because you have that hope. Blackpilling, being blackpilled, is essentially an entire removal of hope. And you just believe that, okay, well, the future is going to be worse than the past and the present, no matter what I do. So therefore, why bother? Right? That's nihilism. It's just like, well, what's the point? Like, what's the point of going to work and making money What's the point of having relationships and raising a family? And like, what's the point of any of it if no matter what I do, things are just going to crap anyway? That's a very, very dangerous mindset for people to have. It's an awful mindset for people to have. So I think it's imperative that those of us with a platform, and even those who don't have a big platform, just guard against that. I think it's a temptation. I think that demoralization is one of the most powerful weapons in the devil's arsenal. And I think part of the reason is because it's very subtle. It tends to be a very slow and long process, and it's very subtle. It's not obvious in your face, and it causes you to defeat yourself. Because if you don't think you can win, you've essentially already lost. Like, if you do not believe that you have the power and the capability to improve your life or to do something that's valuable in the world, then you're kind of right? Like, whether you believe it or you don't, you're correct. Does that make sense?
Yes. But I mean, it's also pointlessness, and which is a very, very unhealthy place to be. I mean, and to some degree, everybody gets blackpulled at some point. Like, let's say somebody very close to you dies, and then you go, well, I don't understand. They were a good person. They shouldn't have died. Mm-hmm. Why do the bad people not die? And the good people get taken, that kind of thing.
We need to be realistic about the human condition. And the human condition is that we're all born. We all live. We don't know how much time. If you're lucky, it might be, at the absolute extreme maximum, it'll be 115, 120 years. More likely, it's going to be more likely it's going to be somewhere between, let's say, 75 and 100.
85.
Yeah. And then we die. I personally believe in the afterlife. I don't believe that this relatively short time we have on this earth is the be all and end all. There are people who believe that. And of course, such people do tend to be more prone to depression and anxiety and nihilism. That's not my personal belief. But ultimately, like, that's the human condition. Everybody that we know and love is going to get sick and is going to die. Everyone. Brothers, sisters, parents, grandparents, sons, daughters. Certainly as parents, you want to go. Every parent wants to go before their children do. Sadly, that does not always happen. And that's the human condition. And you could look at that. I can totally empathize with how someone could just look at the state of humanity and be like, man, this is a bit of a raw deal. Like, this kind of sucks. Like, we're born into the earth. We don't choose to be born. We just are born into whatever circumstances. And then life is tough. And there's accidents, and there's crime, and there's tragedies, and there's sickness, and then we all die at the end of it. I can see how someone could look at that in a shallow way and be like, yeah, like, what's the point of it all? That is absolutely not my worldview, but I could see how someone could look at it like that. But I think we need to be realistic and then think, okay, to me, I'm very, very conscious of mortality, very hyper conscious of mortality. And that makes me more positive and more motivated because I recognize I'm going to die. And everybody I know and I love and I care about is also going to pass away. Like, this is temporary. We don't have this forever. When I talk to my family members, especially as they get older, right? If someone is listening to this and you're still blessed to have your parents around, you're still blessed to, have your, I don't have, thankfully I have my parents still with me. All of my grandparents have passed away. Probably about 50% of my uncles and aunties have passed away. But of course, new life has come into the family as well. And I just recognize, like, we don't have this forever. So treat people well. Don't hold grudges. If you've got a dream, if you've got something that you want to achieve, like, what are you waiting for? What are you procrastinating for? Like, go out there and do it, because we don't have forever. I hope and I pray and I do my best to make sure that I'm going to be alive for the next several decades. But it's not guaranteed. I know many people. I've had friends. I've had family members who didn't make it to my age. Most of us have that, right? And the older you get, the more death that you see. And so I think if you are cognizant of that and you sort of frame it the right way, it becomes a bigger motivator to do things and to live your life with meaning and with purpose and to actually treat people kindly. because you recognize, you know what, like this is just temporary. Every time I interact with someone, there is some probability that it's the last time I'll interact with them. That's possible, right? That's possible. And so therefore, I'm not into like holding stupid grudges or like just being mad and resentful at people over like some really minor thing. I'm just like, whatever. I don't have the time or the energy for that. If someone wants to feel that way towards me, that's a shame. And I hope that they don't. But I'm not going to give them a good reason to, and I'm not going to hold that the other way towards them. I'm sure there's someone out there who's got like holding some grudge against me and I don't even know why. And they're kind of stewing on it. And I'm not conscious of it.
It's because you're positive. It's because you're positive, and that's toxic.
Yeah, it's a weird one, man. It's a weird one. Like, I don't know. I would like to believe that I generally have a healthy mindset, and I don't know how common that is. And so I like to at least explain to people and kind of show people what I think and why I think and believe what I think and believe. Because I do believe that it serves me well. I think it serves the people who are around me well. I think it serves my audience and my followers well. Because there's also a lot of responsibility with it, man. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that there are over 2 million people have voluntarily chosen to follow me online on one of these platforms. That's a lot of people. And with that, it's a lot of responsibility. It's one thing when you're kind of posting into the ether and no one is paying attention, no one is reading, no one is listening, no one is watching. But when you know, hey, like there are millions of people of all ages, from children up until elderly people, who are on a daily basis, at least on a weekly basis, are paying attention somewhat to what you're doing, I take that with a level of seriousness. And it doesn't mean that I censor myself or I try to sort of play to the audience or crowd or something, but it does mean that I'm just conscious and I'm aware that I can use this platform. I can use my words to actually cause quite significant damage or do significant good. And I do my best to do the latter. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But you know, if you imagine that you're standing imagine you're in like an arena or you're outside and you have an audience of 1,000, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, 1 million, however many people see your things online, right? Over the course of a year. Like, let's say 1 million people, let's say 2 million people see your stuff. Imagine like actually standing in front of that many people. 2 million, that's the size of a small nation. All right. Imagine having those people in front of you. Like, what would you want to say to them? Would you want to blackpill them? Would you want them to turn against each other or turn against themselves? Or would you want to, you know, teach them something or give them a motivational message or just encourage them? Right. What would you want to say to them? So that's the way that I kind of think of the audience that I do have. It's weird because we're just on our phones or on our keyboards and you can't see the people. You sort of see the metric of, you know, X number of followers, and you can see the views and you can see how many downloads and whatever it is. But I think if you imagine these are all real people, like these are actual human beings scattered around the earth. If they were all in a room, I mean, that would be quite terrifying to begin with. But yeah, what would I want to tell them? What would be my message? And so I do my best to think of it that way. And when I am veering off of it, I try to kind of come back to what I'm saying here and really think again of like, all right, what am I actually doing here? Like, why am I standing here? Why am I tweeting? Why am I podcasting? Why am I writing? Why am I even doing this? And that helps me to kind of recenter on my mission, which is ultimately to positively inspire and motivate people. And also I'd say kind of just try to keep people grounded in reality as well, in light of all the things that we've been saying.
A great way to unblackpill yourself is having a child.
Yes.
Because then suddenly everything about life changes.
Well, it's the embodiment of hope, isn't it? I mean, part of the reason you've probably seen a lot of people now talking, and I talk quite a bit about the fact that pretty much every economically developed country now has a negative birth rate. And one of the points that is rarely brought up is just the impact of the blackpilling. The ultimate blackpilling is deciding consciously and intentionally not to reproduce because you don't want to bring children into quote unquote this kind of world. That is the ultimate. If you think of how deep that is, like Satan has won at that point. Like that is like the devil has won. If the devil has convinced you, that has demoralized you to the point that I'm not talking about infertility. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who are consciously and explicitly actively saying, I do not want to have children. Why? Because I don't want to bring them into this dark, evil world. No, none of your ancestors who are in your blood, like if you think about it, every single one of us walking this planet, we are part of an unbroken chain of reproduction going back thousands, millions, I don't know, however many years, whatever, however long human beings have been around, we're part of an unbroken chain. And so think, you're so black-pilled, you're going to be the one who's like, I'm ending this chain. It ends with me, right? Your parents reproduced, your grandparents reproduced, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, all the way back. And you're going to be the person now in 2025 who's like, the buck stops with me. It's over. That is like the ultimate blackpilling. And millions of people in a lot of different countries have come to that conclusion. And I'll tell you what's even more absurd about it, Jerm, is that you cannot objectively tell me that we are worse off than our great-grandfathers and our great-great-grand, right? Like, come on. Like, what? You think survival now is harder than it was 100 or 200 or 300 years ago? Absolutely not. You think that there's more war and more famine and more, like, whatever it is that is scary, we actually pretty much have less of it now than we did before. Even if you just go back 100 years, which isn't, in the grand scheme of things, that long ago. Think of life in 1925 versus life in 2025. And I would much, if I had a choice of choosing in which era I could live, despite all the problems that we have, I would certainly pick 2025. And so, yeah, it's a big psyop, and it's a shame.
Well, a friend of mine asked me a few months ago if I would go back to 2019, and I thought about it, and my answer is no. I wouldn't. I'm happier post-COVID.
Yes. Do you know what as well? If you went back to 2019, it still means that you have to live through 2020, 2021. All you're doing is you're just hitting rewind, and then you're going to live through that crap anyway. So, like, you know, if you went back, it means you're going to go through it all again.
No, but you get what the meta question is.
I do, but when I think of it, I'm like, well, that's not really a good question, because I'm like, well, you're not going to be you're not going to be frozen in 2019. All right, time is still going to progress, and then you're going to go through all that garbage again. So yeah, I'd rather be on the opposite end of it.
But I mean, just adding to the points that you were making earlier, one of the other Blackpool issues that also bugs me a lot, actually, is this thing about being a gatekeeper or controlled opposition. Have you had these terms thrown at you? It's ridiculous.
Of course, Jerm, come on.
because if you don't believe 100% of what that person believes, you are therefore a gatekeeper.
Yes.
You know, it's the weirdest thing that you need to be a mirror image of somebody in order to be, in their mind, pure.
Yeah, and do you know what I think has happened as well is and I said this at the time, and I think it's still proving to be true now that we're a few years past it. A lot of people most people, I would say most people, I wouldn't even say a lot of people, I would say the majority of people have not 100% recovered from the COVID era. Regardless of whether someone was like a true believer, 500 masks, 10 vaccines, or a complete skeptic, everybody is permanently changed. People have lost trust. People have lost the ability to tell truth from fiction, to know who to trust and to know who to try. A lot of stuff was damaged in that time. Like, people tend to focus on the economics and the numbers, the things that you can measure, right? There's the stats and the data. People tend to focus on that. They don't tend to focus on the psychological and societal impact of such a thing. And something I've certainly found is on the more skeptical side, right? On the side of the people who are more questioning or in opposition to, say, the lockdowns and the mandates and all the narrative and so on, right? I certainly fall on that front. It also can cause a type of like psychosis or paranoia. So you have on one end where the people who are just terrified of like the disease itself, right? You have like the extremes on that end. We know the types, 2020, 2021, like the people who wanted to like...
We're all going to kill Granny.
Yes, right? That's one form of hysteria. But there's also another form of hysteria on the other end, right? And neither of those sides of people have recovered particularly well. And part of the reason is because we never got any answers, right? There was no accountability. Nobody ever... from the origin of the thing itself to the reason why the nations responded why they did, and the reason why all these politicians did what they did, the vaccine manufacturers, we still don't really have any answers.
Like nothing's happened. Yeah.
No, nothing's happened. There's been no accountability. Putin invaded Ukraine and people just kind of switched the narrative and like started talking about something completely different. So we never quite got those answers. I know for a fact I'm changed because of it. I'm not as trusting of the average person as I used to be, I don't think.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I'm not excluding myself when I say that everybody has changed somewhat. And I think that's part of it. So I think with the people who are like more on the skeptical end of it, and there are degrees to that, so much trust was broken that they quite literally don't know who to trust. So someone who is on the very far end of that, they might be hearing me talking right now, and they're like, he's like, he must be on, he must be one of the, I don't know what part, I don't know who's funding him or what organization he's part of or like this or this, but he's got to be.
Zuby's controlled opposition.
Yeah. Like, dude, I've heard it all. Right. I've heard I'm part of this group. I'm part of that group. I'm secretly funded by this person. I'm talking and it's just like, boy, like, take, as Michael Malice says, right, take one or two red pills, but don't take the entire, right, like don't take the entire container, because then you can't you can't trust anyone who's not like as extreme as you and as mistrusting as you suddenly now becomes your enemy, and you can't even have allies because it's just like, nope, I can't trust anyone. And that's just as limiting a position as the person who is wearing 3 masks and holed up in their apartment in a bubble because they don't want to catch COVID. Like it's just as soul damaging, because it just breaks the human interaction. And it's good to have some degree of skepticism, right? Like I'd be the first to say that, but there are levels. And when you're just going to start inventing narratives in your head and connecting dots that don't even exist because you are so deep down, I think it's time to, just come up for some air and go outside in the world and live your life, and you'll see it's okay.
Yeah, go for a walk, have a glass of whiskey or something.
Yeah.
Or in your case, non-alcoholic.
Non-alcoholic, yeah. Go to the gym.
How long has that been now?
No drinking?
Yeah.
I last had a drink 15 years ago.
Yes, that is inspiring.
Yeah. My last drink, I was 23.
It's my vice.
Oh, really?
I mean, come on, you've been here. I love a glass of wine.
Is a glass of wine a vice? I don't think so.
Anyway, I want to just quickly horseshoe back to what you were saying earlier, because it made me think of when I traveled to China last year. And this is the... it's just so absurd. I come back and I go, you know what, guys? It's not what you think it is. It's not what you see in the media. Jerm is working for China. Jerm's funded by China. It's ridiculous. You can't win, Zuby. You can't win.
No, you can't. You're just supposed to sit in your house and tweet angrily and write angry YouTube comments and be mad on Reddit and just, yeah, like, don't.
Is it at all possible? Is it at all possible that China is not this totalitarian communist hellhole that X has made it out to be? Well, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's a bit better than that. No, you can't say that. You can't say that.
I'll tell you something else I've noticed, Jerm, is that most people, it doesn't matter whether they're British, American, South African, Saudi Arabian, Nigerian, it doesn't matter, Chinese, most people would not like outsiders to judge their nation based on its government. Most people don't want that. Absolutely. The typical American would not like it does not like it when, or would not like it if non-Americans based their view on the USA and Americans based on the actions of their government over the past few decades. And most Americans would say that that is not an accurate gauge of the USA. And this is true of all countries. However, when it comes to looking at other nations, particularly ones you have not been to, people like to judge them based not just on their government, but the worst aspects of their government. Okay? So if you said, you know what, I went to China and I had a great time and people were nice and the cities were beautiful, someone will be like, well, oh my gosh, but like the CCP did this and this and this. And you're like, well, I'm not talking about the Communist Party. I'm talking about like the country, like the 1.2 billion people and all of these cities and the countryside and the food and the culture and all of that. And so I find that people use like very unjust scales when it comes to their own nation versus other ones. Okay, like imagine if someone said, I don't know, like if someone were to just think of, like the USA is a great example because the US government is involved in like everything. They've got all their 800 military bases around the world, and pretty much every foreign conflict that you can name, they're somehow involved in it. So if someone was like, you know what, I don't like the USA or Americans because of like, it's not hard to list the sins of the American government over the last century. But I think it would be reasonable to say, like, you know what, like that's not really a fair, like, I mean, we can firstly ask the question of how well the government even represents the population. I'd say in most countries, not particularly well. And I'd also say that we as citizens know that we don't really have all that much control over it. Even in a so-called democracy, it's not like I have say or power over what the Prime Minister of the UK decides to do or what the Parliament does. Like I have zero control over it. So I would find it pretty crazy if someone decided that they don't like British people or they hate the UK because, I don't know, Tony Blair got involved in the Iraq War or whatever. Or we can go back further, colonization, right? Like that's a big one.
That's why I'm in South Africa.
Yeah, it was like I didn't do that. You know what I mean? Like, like hopefully it's kind of obvious, right? But like I wasn't like exactly involved in. You can only reach the people that you can reach, and everyone's on a different time scale. There are some people who they're just going to be ignorant their entire lives, and they're just not interested in learning. They're not interested in expanding their mind, certainly not changing their mind. And you just kind of have to like chalk that up as a loss. But there are billions of people. There are so many people out there who are genuinely intellectually curious, and they're at least somewhat open-minded, and they're interested in learning about the world and different countries and different types of people. And I would say that I would like to think that that's the majority of people. And so those people, you can at least, even if they're not going to like agree with you totally, you can at least offer a different perspective so that I like to think of people's worldview as like a resolution knob. And one reason why I like travel and I encourage people to travel is because I believe it increases your resolution. Okay, so before you went to China, you have like a fuzzy low resolution view of what it's like. You have some idea because you probably read some stuff. You probably met people from there. You've probably
and CNN doesn't lie.
No, but you have some view, but it's low resolution. And then you travel there and, the more you spend time and the more you actually meet people and go around, you increase the resolution. Before I ever went to South Africa, first time I stepped foot in the country was 2023. Before I ever went to South Africa, I had an idea of it. I went to school and have friends from South Africa. I've read about the country. I've looked up the different cities on Wikipedia or on YouTube and seen people travel. Like, I've spoken to people from there, but then actually being there, going to Johannesburg, going to Cape Town, spending a few weeks in the country and then going back another time, my view is more, I have a better resolution view. It's not as good as yours. You live there. You're from there. So you have a higher resolution view of South Africa than I do. Absolutely. But I have a higher resolution view than someone who's never stepped foot in the nation and they're just seeing a few things passing by maybe on their Instagram feed here and there. And that's why I think it's good for people to travel, not just abroad, but even within your own country. Even within your own country, there's a lot to see. There's a lot to learn. There's different cultures. There's different types of people. And at a minimum, you can at least just get a better understanding of the world. You might still decide that, you are totally happy where you are and living the way that you want to live, but at least you can understand how other people live and why they believe what they believe, why they do the things that they do. And you can also see that, human beings we do have a lot of differences in many ways, individually and collectively, but when you travel a lot and you've met a lot of people, you do realize like most people want quite similar things. Most people around the world
most people don't want to fight.
No, absolutely not. Again, if they did, civilization wouldn't function. Yeah. You wouldn't be able to do anything. Like you really would not be able to function if most people were aggressive or criminal or violent, or like you wouldn't be able to do anything. You just have to stay in your house and huddle up with a bunch of guns in a bunker, like waiting for someone to come and attack you. And fortunately, maybe there's a time and a place for that, but that's not that's not an everyday scenario. Not a lot of people have been to North Korea for obvious reasons, but I would imagine that most people in North Korea are like decent, hardworking people. Like I'd imagine they're not that different to South Koreans. They're probably they're going to be more ignorant and naive about the world because of the actions of their government, but they're still people. They probably want to work. They probably want to look after their kids. They probably want to get married and find love. They probably want to eat food and drink clean water and just do normal human things.
I kind of want to go there, though. It's like a weird bucket list thing, North Korea.
Yeah, I hear that. I know a couple people who have been.
I know one person. I know of. I've spoken to him, but he's not like a friend. But I don't know really of anybody. I think Michael Mattis, you mentioned earlier, he's been there.
Yeah, he's been. I would like to. I'll tell you that like that's one of the only countries in the world where I might not go. Like, it's probably, it might be the only country where, due to like genuine safety concerns, I'd be like, yeah, maybe I just wouldn't go there. I don't know though. I'm like you. I have a bit of a morbid curiosity about it. Like I'd say literally every other country in the world, I'd be like, yeah, I'd go there. Like if someone gave me a free ticket, there's places that I wouldn't go just kind of like solo by myself without knowing the lay of the land, right? But if it's like, okay, cool, like someone could show me around and I'd have some, in some places, I guess, actual security, but in other places, just like guidance. There's most places I travel, by myself, whatever. Others, I'm like, yeah, I travel with some precautions, like we were saying earlier. But yeah, North Korea. But I'd actually say that it would fall into the second category. Like if I would know that, okay, I'm not going to be like imprisoned or like, I don't know. Like if I could be, if it could be guaranteed that I'm not going to like get kidnapped by their government or something, then I'd be like, yeah, absolutely, I'd go. But I do know that if you visit it, you can't just kind of like travel around. It's all regimented and regulated. You can't even leave the hotel without permission. So yeah, you can only go to the capital, right? You're not allowed to leave the capital. So
Yeah.
I don't know how
So
much
it's
of
all
it you'd
theater.
be able to see. Yeah, it would be curious to actually go to like the smaller towns and villages and stuff, but I don't think you can as a foreigner.
Something that I live by is a quote by Bruce Lee, and it really feeds into what you've been talking about in this conversation. And that it goes something like this: take that which is valuable, discard that which is not, and create what is uniquely yours.
That's an interesting Bruce Lee quote because there's something I say that's very similar, and I didn't invent it, but I often say, "Eat the meat, spit out the bones."
Yes.
So it
same
kinda,
thing.
yeah, it's kind of the same thing, right? Like take what you need and discard of what is not helpful to you. I think I have quite a lot of them. When it comes to interacting with other people, I certainly always assume that I can learn something from everybody. So I don't approach conversations or interactions with the assumption that I know. It doesn't matter if the person is older than me, younger than me, whatever. Like there's 5-year-olds who can teach me things. So I always assume like you can learn something from everybody. And so in some cases it'll be, if the person is a complete train wreck, it might be like learning what not to do and learning how not to interact and how not, learning what a terrible mindset is and making sure you don't have it. But, even on a more positive front, there's so much knowledge in the world and there's so many experiences and all of us have only ever lived our own lives, right? Since we're born till the day we die, we can only ever be us. And so for that reason, I'm genuinely intrigued by people. Like everybody has a story. Some people aren't great at telling it because they almost like don't realize they have a story. But I would like to believe that most people in the world are interesting. Like it doesn't matter, like anyone you have a conversation with. If you are a good conversationalist and you're an interested person, then other people become interesting, right? You can just talk to your taxi driver or your Uber driver or the person cleaning the hotel that you're staying in or like the person selling fruit in the market, whatever. Like they've all got, they don't just have a story, they have stories. Everybody's got stories like, where did they grow up? What was their family like, their childhood? Do they have children or not? If they do, like those are more stories. Like, what are your children doing? Like, what are they up to? Where have you traveled to? What languages do you speak? Oh, interesting. How did you learn to speak? Why do you speak that language? Like, people are infinitely fascinating. And that's definitely something I live by. And I think it keeps me quite open-minded. And I think it's led me to some of the conclusions that I believe about the world and I believe about human beings. And also, it's just fun. I tend to view the world a little bit as a playground. I think that, again, maybe this is a through line through a lot of things that we've been talking about, which is that, something interesting with children as well. Like, we're both new fathers. And I've been an uncle for 18 years. I have 10 nieces and nephews. So I'm glad I got to experience being an uncle for many times over before being a father. And it's kind of interesting with, children, anyone who's spent time with children, whether it's your own or other people's, they have such a joy of life and they're just infinitely curious and they want to know everything and they want to ask why and what and how, and they want to know how things work and everything that they see is new and it's exciting. And I think it's important as we grow older and as we mature to maintain some of that wonder and some of that curiosity. I think people get boring when they lose all of it. Like naturally, as you mature and you take on responsibilities and you become a little bit more cynical and street smart and wise about the world, you're not going to have the same level of wonder as a 4-year-old, and you shouldn't. But it's good to maintain a little bit of it, and it keeps you creative. It keeps you wanting to go on adventures and to do things, because I think it's very easy to stagnate. It's very easy to get to your late 20s or your 30s, certainly your 40s, and just kind of like ossify and never do anything new anymore and not try anything and not go anywhere and not meet any new people. And I don't think that's generally good. Right? You don't need to be like hyper extroverted if that's not your natural wiring. But I think it's always good to be learning new things and trying new things and meeting new people, going to new places, and just looking around the world and just appreciating it. It's part of why it's good to, when people say go touch grass. I know it's often said quite flippantly, but there's something to that. Like just going out in nature, whether you like the mountains or the desert or lakes or rivers or the forest, just being out there and just kind of looking at it all. And you're just like, man, this is cool. Like this is pretty magnificent. This is pretty wonderful. This is pretty exciting. And you can kind of intentionally tap into it. And that's something I certainly try to do. And, every year I'm always trying new things, trying to learn new stuff, trying to get better in some way, trying to learn about something. And, yeah, why not? Why not?
How can I follow your toxic positivity?
Well, the first one is I just started a Substack a couple of weeks ago, so I want people to subscribe to me on Substack. If you go to realtalkwithzuby.com, then you can find my writings and my articles. I'm doing more long form writing over there. And then on all social media at Zuby Music, Zuby Music. You can find me on everything.
Are you still recording?
I am. I actually recorded a couple of feature verses for some other artists' projects quite recently. And I'm going to be releasing some new music of my own this year. I've written a few new songs. I haven't recorded them yet, but they're written and there's more to come. So yeah, music is, sometimes I put it on pause while I'm doing other things, but I haven't stopped rapping or stopped making music or fallen out of love with it or anything like that. It's just been on pause for a while, but 100% new music is coming this year.
All right, Zuby, thank you for joining me in the trenches.
God bless you, Jerm. I appreciate it.